So maybe if dear leader Justin Trudeau wasn't constantly embroiled in scandals, he might have time to take a look at something like this. Restaurant and bars brace for biggest alcohol tax jump in 40 years. Now, is there any reason this could be a bad idea? Well, there is this. 10,000 restaurants have closed across Canada since the start of the pandemic. That's from January 4th, 2021. It was 10,000 already then. And I couldn't find any info more recent than that other than something like this. Annual report shows more restaurants closing instead of opening. That's from September 15th, 2022. This is an annual report by Restaurants Canada, and it said 43% more restaurants have closed in the past year in comparison to the amount that have opened. So that's bad. So it seems like restaurants and bars might be struggling in Canada. And what do you do with an industry that's struggling? Well, you tax them more, of course. But, on the bright side, as far as I know, as far as I'm aware, Trudeau hasn't called the restaurant and bar industry racist yet. So, there's that. So it says here that Canada's restaurant industry is bracing for the biggest jump in the country's alcohol excise duty in more than 40 years, and just the perfect timing, spurring warnings that the tax hike could force some bars and restaurants out of business. And I guess under Liberal Party logic, if they go out of business, it's probably because they were greedy or something like that. Definitely nothing to do with their policies. Quote, any increase at this very vulnerable time for our industry is just another blow while we're down. From Brenda O'Reilly, the owner of multiple restaurants and a brewery in St. John's. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. It says bar and eatery operators across Canada have endured lockdowns, labor shortages, supply chain mayhem, and soaring costs for everything from payroll to cooking oil. Rising inflation has also softened demand as some consumers stay home to save money. Quote, many of us haven't recovered from the pandemic and now they want to raise this tax. It's hard to get blood out of a turnip. We'll see more restaurant closures if this goes ahead. The federal beverage alcohol duty is set to increase 6.3% on April 1st. 6.3%. Now, these alcohol excise duties are imposed at the manufacturing level and adjusted annually based on inflation. Now, considering these special circumstances over the last few years, a government that was on top of things economically might take a look at something like this, which I'm sure they've heard many complaints about from the industry. They might look at something like this and say, okay, maybe here's a place where we can give them a break. This is something that will help these small businesses. But of course, when you've got a government led by somebody like Trudeau, that's just not going to happen. Because, it looks like they really don't care. Now, this duty is separate from provincial liquor board fees and sales taxes. It's imposed at the point of production and paid by the manufacturer, which means it's built into the price of the product, and magnified as it goes through the supply chain from the distributor to the retailer. So that means the restaurant or the bar that you're going to is paying more now. And that means they have a choice. They can either put up their prices and hope that the customers are okay with that, or they have to keep the prices the same and lose money. And restaurants are not operating off a huge margin. Here from Operations Report Restaurants Canada. What is the profit margin for restaurants in Canada? Overall, the pre-tax profit margin for Canada's food service industry declined from 4.2% in 2018 to 3.8% in 2019. This represents the lowest profitability since Statistics Canada began reporting this data in 2012, and that's before the COOF, and it's before the massive inflation that we've seen since then. What do you think the inflation has done to this 3.8% profit margin? Here's a quote from this restaurant in Toronto. Quote, everything is ridiculously expensive, and restaurant owners are losing their minds. So it is no longer about coming out of the COOF. When we go to the grocery stores, the prices of things are just very expensive. We really hope to see it go down because the profit margins are just not there anymore at the rate at which the prices are changing. So again, what's the Trudeau government's remedy for this? Tax them more. And just because it's a tax on the manufacturers, it doesn't mean that it doesn't affect the restaurateurs. Of course it does. They have to factor that in. It's just as much a tax on them as if Trudeau was going in himself personally and taking money out of the till. Anyway, please subscribe, like, and share. Sharing really helps me out. I thank you for that. I will see you next time.